Hey everyone and welcome to The Learning Ladder. Today's video is slightly different than my normal content. We're going to be talking about property. We're going to be talking about shared ownership properties, specifically reselling them. We're going to be talking about buying new property, buying property in a different part of the country than where you live. It's all going to be house related, so if that's interesting to you then definitely stick around. It's going to be a long video. It's going to be in two parts because we're halfway through. We haven't got to the end bit yet and I don't know when that's going to be, so stick around if you want to see part two. But let's start from the very beginning. So how did we even end up having a shared ownership property in the first place? So let's go back years. So I've rented for a very long time. Both my parents died when I was young and I've rented for years. I tried to get onto the property ladder, but as many people experience, when you have a big rent, it's really difficult to save for a deposit, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do both. I couldn't pay my rent, I couldn't save for a deposit. And I've had multiple jobs over the years, in terms of I've had one job where I was full-time. I've had a job where I was at university and I worked weekends as well, so pretty much 7 days a week. I've had, as I said, various different job opportunities, and I just could not get the money to save up for a deposit to buy a house. So we got married in 2010, and at the time my husband had been renting as well, but only for 2 years because he'd lived at home obviously longer than I had. So he had been renting for a short amount of time, and even he wanted to get off the property rental market because it's just dead money. It literally is. You're paying rent for nothing. You may as well just throw it down the toilet basically, because it's just wasting money. It really is. And he was really excited to buy too, but at the time he was on a really low income. He did a master's degree at university, yet he was on a really low income, which was crazy. He only earned £2,000 more a year more than I did, and that was just insane. But I hadn't got a master's degree, so it was crazy. However, shortly after we got married, about 6 months after we got married, and we were renting privately, made redundant. So our whole world just completely was gone overnight in terms of any chance of moving house, any chance of buying anything. It was just completely gone. It took him a good 6 months to find another job, and during that time obviously we were having to use debt to pay for stuff and everything else. It was really difficult. But he finally got another job, which was amazing, and the job that he got was much better salary than what he was on before. They even said at the time that they thought he'd been massively underpaid at his other job, and I was thinking, yes, he really was. So he got a pay rise, which was amazing. So we thought, great, this is fantastic. We can finally start to think about, getting a house and all those kind of things that you have dreams and hopes of as you're, newly married and everything else. So I was searching around and I found a scheme where you could do what was called rent to buy. So that's not shared ownership, but basically it's supposed to be a slightly cheaper rent, which is then supposed to enable you to be able to save for a deposit to either buy the house that you live in or buy another house that they have in their portfolio. So it was with a housing association, and you had to meet a specific criteria to get one, so it'd be in a lower income and everything else, and we still were in that criteria, so it was great. We got the house, it was amazing. But we'd only been there, I'd say, a couple of years. During that time we did IVF because we needed to. My husband had male factor infertility, but luckily it was on the NHS that time, so we didn't have to pay for it. I got pregnant straight away and we had our beautiful daughter, and when my daughter was about 7 months old, he was made redundant again, and it was just nightmare alarm bells going off my head. I was thinking, it's worse this time because we have a baby, and all these other bills and everything else. Difference this time between the first time was night and day, because he managed to get another job immediately. Pretty much it was within a couple of weeks, and the relief, I cannot tell you. If you've ever been made redundant, it's the most horrendous thing to happen, and then to happen twice within a couple of years is just unthinkable in terms of normal situations, but it wasn't in our case. So he, as I said, managed to get another job straight away. It was amazing. But the difference between the first job and this one is the first job only gave him statutory redundancy, which was nothing. But this company that he worked at, it was an IT company. He works in IT basically, but the first IT company were just awful, gave him hardly anything. But the second company didn't have to, because he hadn't been there for very long, but they still gave him a couple of £1,000 redundancy, which was absolutely amazing. So that, plus the bit that we'd saved up during the time that he was employed and we were paying the lower rent, we had a little bit of deposit. So I immediately started looking for a house because he got another job straight away. I didn't want this opportunity to, you know, go to waste. We could use this money for a deposit. So I started looking straight away for a house. There was a housing association in the area. They had 2 different plots of houses available, and we went to see the first one, and then we went to see the second plot. Now, the first house on the second plot that we saw had just recently gone back on the market that day. She said within the last hour or so, because the people who were buying it, for whatever reason, I don't know, it went wrong. So we went to view that one. We viewed 2 houses. We viewed the show house first, then we viewed another house. So it was actually the 4th house on the estate that we viewed. As soon as we saw it, we knew it was the one for us. It had a huge garden. We had all these hopes and dreams of growing our own food and getting a dog, you know, all the things you think about. Garden for my daughter. We had a small garden in our other house, and I'd actually bought her for her first birthday a swing set, but when it actually arrived, it's one of those things where you order something online, it ends up being the wrong dimensions than what you imagined, and it just was massive. It would take up our whole garden. So I just had this in the cupboard upstairs in the spare room, thinking, oh, I hope one day I can actually use this swing. And then when we went to view this house, I thought, this is perfect, the swing will fit in here perfectly. And I'm just thinking, you know, she was 10 months old at the time, and it was absolutely sweltering hot that day when we were viewing the house, and you couldn't take your pram in, obviously the new build houses or anything. So I was carrying her in my arms, and we were going to view all these houses, and I was sweating. And then we went into this house, and I don't know, it just felt 100% right. It's just amazing. It was amazing. And we put an offer in straight away. Obviously, it's one of those things where you make a reservation fee. We put our reservation fee in, and then we had to go through the whole mortgage application and be approved, because it was a shared ownership property. So the property that we picked was a 50% share. At the time, it was a lot of money to us, but looking back now, as in what it is now, it is just crazy how much prices have gone up so much. But at the time, it was 140,000 for the whole house. It was a 3-bedroom semi with a large garden. It was completely bare though. Nothing was inside in terms of, there was no carpets, there was no curtains, there was no blinds, there was not even curtain poles. It was just completely a shell. Concrete floors throughout the whole house. Very basic fixtures and fittings. You know, just, it was white kitchen cabinets, a bathroom, very small bathroom, but it was fine for us. It was, you know, we're only a small family, and a downstairs toilet, which is what we wanted. We wanted the 2 toilets, and yeah, it was just the thing that I loved about it the most was it had a utility room, so a separate area for the kitchen for your washer and dryer, which I really like, because I think when you have your washer and dryer in the kitchen, obviously it takes up more space. So I loved the fact that it had a utility room. I was so excited about that. You know, when you've got babies and washing and everything else, it's just nice to have a little area where you can do all that. There's a little folding section for you where you can fold stuff, and it was amazing. We were so happy. So as I said, it was 50% share, so we had to get a mortgage for 70,000, and obviously we had our deposit, and then we had to pay rent and service charge on the portion that we didn't own. So the service charge was for their insurance, so you have to pay for their buildings insurance as part of our service charge, and rent, and that's all we were told at the time with the fees. There was nothing else. That was everything we were told. So we went through the whole process, purchased the house. It was I've never bought a house before, neither has my husband, so neither of us knew what to expect. And obviously I didn't have parents to ask, and you know, nobody else we knew had been in this situation where they were buying shared ownership, so it was all a very new thing. I remember walking out of the office on the estate, and the lady who was doing the sale hands me this card and says, here's a solicitor that's giving discounts to people that are purchasing on the estate. Why don't you call them and see, get the quote for your solicitor's fees. And I just did that. I literally did that. I got a quote from them, but I did, in the back of my mind, I remembered you're supposed to get multiple quotes, so I did contact a couple of other people to get quotes, but they were by and far the best quote, so we went with them. So basically the solicitor that the estate recommended, we went with them to purchase the house. Everything went fine. It took, I think it was, my daughter just turned 1 by the time we moved in, so she was about 10 months old at the time we came to view, and then she'd recently turned 1. It was about 2 weeks after she turned 1. I was kind of sad because I was hoping we would have been moved in for her birthday, and I wanted to get a swing set up and everything, but you know, it was like a couple of weeks later. It was no big deal. As soon as we moved in, pretty much one of the first things we did was set up a swing in the garden. And it was just amazing. We had to obviously paint, we had to do carpets. It was white everywhere. So I wanted her to have the pink room, and you know, the girly room, and I painted this whole mural in her room, and it was just first time buyer excitement. It was amazing, and we were really happy. About 3 weeks after we moved in, we got a letter in the post saying we owed £150 for a land ground rent, and I thought at first that they'd sent this letter to the wrong people. How could we possibly owe ground rent? We already pay our monthly rent, we already pay our service charge. I didn't know what they were talking about, so I just ignored it because I thought they'd clearly made a mistake. About 2 weeks later, I got another letter saying, hello, you haven't paid your £150 ground rent, you need to pay this immediately. You know, one of those emergency letters, if you don't pay, there's going to be serious complications. So I was thinking, okay, what the heck is this? I ring them, and they say, oh yes, you have to pay ground rent as well as all the other things. I'm thinking, what? We never actually received any paperwork at all for our sale until we moved into the house. This is something that at the time I didn't know wasn't necessarily the norm. I only know that now, that it's not necessarily the norm, and I even really don't know that 100%. But this time when we've been making our purchases, the solicitor has sent us all kind of paperwork to look at, and the deed and everything else. That never happened, and I don't know if that is normal. But because, as I said, the house we're purchasing right now is in a different part of the country where they have different rules, so I don't know if that's their rule, and in England where we are currently, they don't send you paperwork. I have no idea, but all that happened was, in terms of paperwork, and this is why we didn't know about the ground rent, we went to the solicitor's office on the day when we were supposed to go through and sign everything. He physically read the information to us in terms of what he thought we needed to know. You know, he at no point mentioned anything at all about a ground rent. Nothing at all. He only told us about the service charge and the rent, which we already knew about because that was what the lady on the estate had told us. And he also made a comment about the shape of the garden, how it's a weird shape and things like that. That's the only things he was really telling us about. He went through the mortgage offer that we had, and we signed, and that was it. No paperwork was ever physically given to us from the solicitor. Nothing was emailed, nothing was given to us at that office. We just walked out. Then when we moved in to the house, there was this giant red folder that was on the kitchen cabinets when we walked in. And in there were things like warranties for the floor and the cabinets, instructions for how to use the boiler and the alarm system. And then there was a lease that was in there, and then there was a couple of insurance certificates for the gas boiler and that kind of thing. That was it. That was all that was in there. So we were never actually given a copy to read or anything of our deed or anything like that. But with us having a mortgage, you know, we assume that just the deed sent off to the mortgage company, and you don't actually ever see it until you know, own the whole thing. So none of it was unusual to us. But that's why we didn't know about the ground rent. So when I contacted the solicitor and said, why do we have to pay this ground rent? I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't massive. It was £150 a year. But when you're not expecting that, and you're already not, you know, we weren't, obviously the fact that we were able to qualify for a shared ownership property means we weren't very rich at the time. So every bit matters. So I needed to know why I was paying this £150. So I contacted the solicitor, and they emailed back and said, oh, it was supposed to be £10, which is actually what our service charge was. And he said, let me look into it. We never heard back from him at all. But the thing we did do was go and read our red binder, and in there was the lease, and in the lease it specifically said there was a ground rate of £150 a year. So the solicitor hadn't told us. I don't know if it wasn't in his copy, because I never saw what his copy was, but he never told us about it, and the only way we found out was from the letter. So that was kind of like an unusual thing to happen, but you know, it was fine. They managed, we managed to sort it all out, and we paid the £150 a year, as well as the service charge and the rent. It's still it's still much better than renting privately. That was our opinion at the time, and it still is to this day, to be fair, because you can build up equity in your property, which is what we have done. So fast forward, about 3 years after we'd moved in, the solicitor at the time, this is one of the things he did say to us when we were in the office, was he said, why don't, in about 3 years, you should maybe consider buying more of the property, or what they call staircasing. So you don't have to buy the whole thing all at one time. You have to buy the minimum of what they request, and in this case the housing association wanted 50%, but after that you can staircase up in increments. So he said, in about 3 years you should try and buy the rest of it, and we would have done that. But in those 3 years, that 3 year period, my husband had accidentally crashed the car, and we'd literally almost paid off the finance for it, and it was an icy day. He skidded on ice and hit the curb. It wasn't, the car didn't even look that injured, but for whatever reason it was. He didn't hit anybody else, just the curb, and they wrote it off. But because we had finance on it, it was virtually nothing. So we ended up having to start all over again with a brand new, well, it wasn't brand new, we've never had a brand new, but another used car. So we had to start off with a new loan, which was absolutely devastating, but what can you do? And we'd also decided, and this was our personal choice, to go and try for another baby via IVF. This time we had to pay privately because you only get one cycle on the NHS here for free. So we decided, rather than buying the rest of the house, we would do IVF. And the reason why we decided to do it is because my husband's sperm count had dropped even lower, and we thought, it's now or never. So we decided to do that instead of after the 3 years. Unfortunately, I did get pregnant, but I had a miscarriage after my IVF cycle. So unfortunately, we still had this loan to pay for IVF, but no baby. But it's one of those things, if you've ever done IVF, it's 50-50, and sometimes even less than that. There's no guarantees. So it was very obviously devastating, but it's one of those things. So we had to pay the loan for the IVF treatment. After that, it was almost £8,000. So again, that stopped us from buying any more of the house. We finally got to a point where this year, so we're now 2023, we thought, okay, now is the time when we're going to either buy the house or we're going to sell. So naively at the time, I was looking at properties in the area, and I was thinking, they've gone up quite a bit, but surely our house couldn't have gone up that much. I don't know why I thought that. I was just possibly too optimistic. I think what really lured me into a false sense of security was the house across the road from us. They moved in at the same time, and when you look on sold prices, it said that the house had sold for 130,000. So I was thinking, oh great, that's what ours is going to sell for. That's perfect. We can definitely afford that on a mortgage, because obviously mortgage rates have gone up dramatically compared to what they used to be, and affordability and everything else really matters. So I thought that's perfect. We can definitely manage 130,000. Next door to us, Resale had started doing loads of improvements. They were starting putting on a porch, they were doing the bathroom and the kitchen and things, and I thought, you don't necessarily do all those things if you only own a percentage of the house. You might, but I was thinking, I bet you they've purchased the house, and we say hello to them, but I would never ask them like personal questions or whatever. But my husband was just chatting to them, and the neighbour actually said, oh yeah, we've recently bought the house. And once my husband and I were back in the house, I was like, oh, I wonder how much they paid for it. But I'm not the sort of person who asks these types of things. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna ask. So he was like chatting to the guy again, and he said, you don't have to, feel free not to say, but just curious, how much did you pay for the house? And he told us the price of how much they paid for it, and you could have picked me up off the floor, because they said it was 190,000. And bearing in mind we bought ours for 70, so full share 140. I could not believe that in that amount of time it had gone up. So 10 years it had gone up to 190,000. Now bearing in mind their house is actually slightly smaller than ours. Our garden's probably twice the size. We've got a 3-person drive. So I was thinking ours is going to be even worse. But in the interim period between actually him asking them, we decided to go and get our own valuation. So we didn't know, again, none of this at the time, but from reading the lease after we'd moved in, the red folder, it explains what you need to do. In order to resell a property that's shared ownership, or to even purchase it, you have to have a RICS surveyor come around. Now, if you're actually buying it from the housing association, you have to contact them and tell them you're thinking about buying it, which is what we did do, and they organize a survey for you. You can't organize a survey, they do. If you're buying it from them. That's with our housing association. I think there are rules are slightly different with everybody, but that was what ours were. So we could not choose our own surveyor, they did. The surveyor comes around and has a look at everything, and then he produces a report, sends it to them and to us. So we got our report back, and they gave the figure of what our house was to buy. And I'm not going to say it for personal reasons, but when we looked at the figure, I thought, no, because it was even worse than the figure for next door. So we knew that we couldn't afford to buy it for that much. It just wasn't going to happen. Not just because of the amount, but because of the fact that we need to do improvements in terms of the house is 10 years old. We'd like to, redo the kitchen. The cabinets have been white, these white melamine cabinets for 10 years, and they're still okay. They still function fine, but they're not as good, as nice looking as they were. And plus, I've got 6 dogs, and cabinets and that are white and 6 dogs, even my husband, it doesn't work because it gets stains on. I'm constantly wiping the cabinets with, whether it's got food on for my husband or it's got paw prints on for my dogs. It's like a constant battle of wiping the cabinets. And that's not to say that other cabinets wouldn't show up the dirt too, but I just feel like when it's white and it's kind of like that melamine, things just stick to it. So I want to change out my cabinets. As I said, they're fully functional. There's nothing wrong with them in terms of you can put your stuff in and everything. It's just aesthetically, and they're wear and tear. It's like natural. Even the actual survey said there's wear and tear on the cabinets. I mean, after it was what you'd expect after 10 years. So I'd want to do the kitchen, and we've always said that we'd like a conservatory on the back because we've got this massive big garden, but because the back door leads straight into the kitchen, and when it's muddy and rainy outside, I've got 6 dogs bringing their feet in to the house, covered in mud, and I'm constantly cleaning and mopping. So that's another thing. And we've always had a storage issue because we have a lot of stuff. I'm not a minimalist. And there was never any kind of built-in storage cupboards or anything. We had one, one downstairs, but there was none in the bedrooms. You have to have your own wardrobes and everything else, which takes up floor space. But we've always had a storage issue. So we thought about maybe building kind of a garage, but more for storage to the side of the house. And then we've also thought about building the loft. But all of those things cost money. And with the house at the price that they wanted for it, there's zero chance we could have bought the house and done those improvements. And it would take years and years and years to be able to do that. And we didn't want to stay in this house for that many years. So we knew instantly we weren't going to purchase it. So the other option was to sell. So now, because we'd done a survey with them, they said to us that we could use their survey for their RIC survey if we wanted to. But I thought, this is not an independent survey as far as I can tell. This is a survey that they've arranged by someone we had no say over. I want to get my own survey. So we did. We got our own survey and we had to pay again. So the first time it was 216 and I think it was like 225 the second time. So it's not cheap. You've got to factor these things in to get your own survey. This is even before you list anything. So we got the survey around. He gave us his, the survey around, he gave us his price. We sent it off to the housing association. It wasn't much different, to be fair, but I just like the fact that we were able to choose our own surveyor and it was independent as far as I could see. So, and also because their survey was almost running out by the time, we were thinking of listing. It has to be valid for a certain amount of time, and I thought we might not sell straight away, in which case their survey will have expired anyway, so at least if we get our own survey it'll last a bit longer. So that was the other reason why. So we got our survey, as I said, back, and then once they've agreed, then you have to tell them officially, right, we're going to place it on the market. So then you have to find an estate agent, and then the estate agent comes around. It's not like a regular sale. They don't tell you the price because you've already got this survey. They cannot list it for anything less or more than the price on the survey. Now, I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and I was talking about this guy who made a massive amount of money from a sale of a shared ownership property, whereby he got the surveyor to reduce the price. This sounds a bit, I don't know how he did this, and then he listed it on the market for higher. But you can't do that, not with our housing association. Whatever the surveyor price is for the survey that he whatever that asking price was, it cannot be more than that. So the estate agent has to list for the price that's on there, not more, not less. It's kind of good in a way because you don't get the haggling of people coming and saying, well, can we do it for £5 less or whatever? But you also lose out on if there's a lot of people interested, which is what in our case happened. There's no increasing the price, which really sucked. But you know, it's one of those things. Had we have been a regular house, we could probably have got a bit more than what we actually, the price was for the house, because we had quite a lot of interest. So anyway, the estate agent comes, takes all the photos, you know, all that kind of thing. Then they have to produce the marketing information. Then you have to take the marketing information, send it to the housing association, who has to approve it. And one of the things they're making sure of is that the that the estate agent is not asking more or less money, that the information shows that they're clearly only buying a 50% share or whatever it is, that the person isn't thinking they're going to buy the whole house for that amount of money, and you know, those kinds of things. So they have to sign off on it basically. Then at that point, once they've done that, you can finally market your house. So it is a long process. That took about 2 months to do. But finally we were able to list, and it was live, and I was super shocked at the amount of interest we got. And it just shows you that property prices are so high that it's really difficult for people to get on the ladder, and you know, they're clamoring for these shared ownership opportunities, which I completely understand. We were in the same situation. So we got in the first week we had 4 viewings, and 3 of those people offered. Now it was all very weird, because I thought that we would get to choose out of those 3 offers who we'd like to buy the house, and they said yes, that would be what would happen. So we were excited, you know, and there was, as you do from a, you know, a human nature, there was a person that we preferred, but also I felt like they were the most likely to continue with the sale and everything else. I just got really good, strong, positive vibes from, it was a teacher, and she was going to buy the house with the daughter, and I wanted them to buy the house, but we had no say. The estate agent that we actually went with, that charged £2,500 for their service, which is crazy, but it's one of those things. They picked who could make the offer basically, and they said it was because none of the other people were qualified, which I highly doubt. I can't imagine a teacher going around viewing houses if she's not qualified for a mortgage. It just, and she even told me that she'd been qualified with her bank. So I don't understand what was going on, but you know, I don't know whether the estate agent had an arrangement with, you know, this person, or you don't know, do you? You don't know. Maybe they've been on their books for ages looking for a house, and you know, the estate agent had said to them, we'll find you. I mean, I don't know. She seemed quite pally with this guy though. That's the only thing I could say. She used his first name a lot, and she was like, oh, isn't he a nice guy and everything else, and that was it. So they picked our buyers for us. But at the end of the day, we didn't really care at this point, because you know, we're just super excited to have sold our house so quickly. Bearing in mind, it's really hard to do viewings when you've got 6 dogs. The dogs had to be out. I would clean like a crazy person, getting it all nice and everything else for the people to view. So I was so relieved beyond measure that we got this offer, because then I didn't have to go through the palaver of having viewings. So their offer was accepted. They went through their pre-approval process with the estate agent, where the estate agent made them use their mortgage broker. I don't know if it's, when I say made them, I think the way they actually sold the service to us is that they don't really have a choice. If they wanted to bid on one of their houses or make an offer, they had to use their mortgage broker. So maybe the teacher didn't want to use their mortgage broker, I don't know. But anyway, they went through their mortgage broker, and they were confirmed eligible for a mortgage for the property, for the price and everything else. So with shared ownership, they have to meet certain criteria in addition to that. So they, in our case with our housing association, they had to be on a certain amount of income. They had to not be able to buy a house outright. They had to have a deposit. They had to go through an affordability check, and their mortgage offer had to be pre-approved by the housing association before we could go anywhere. So all that had to take place. So all that took place, and everything was fine. So we went and started viewing houses, because obviously once you go through all those things, you think, right, yes, you know, this is all working out great. So we went to view houses, because where we're moving, it's 9 hours plus away. We went for the day, and drove back that same night, which was insane now, but you know, it's what we had to do, because we had the cat at home and we didn't want to put the cat in kennels or anything like that, so cattery. So we went, we got up super early in the early hours of the morning, drove all the way there. We viewed 2 houses, and then drove home. It's crazy. We were so tired, but you know, when I say so tired, I mean we weren't tired while we were driving, but when we got back, we were absolutely knackered. It was just crazy, because obviously there was more than 2 of, but we could share the driving and things. So we got back and we found our house. It was amazing. It was, I'd say, ticks pretty much most of the boxes. There was 2 boxes that it didn't tick, and it was, you can't have everything. You literally can't have everything, but it was perfect in every other way. So we put an offer in. Their system is different than what it is here in the UK. You have to make a written offer. We did a verbal offer first, which they accepted. Then the solicitors have to make a written offer, which they did, and again that was accepted. So we were set. Everything was amazing. We'd sold and found our new house. It was just, we were so happy. So I thought everything was going to be fine at the time, and you know, I had no kind of issues at first, and then slowly but surely as we crept along, things started to not seem quite right. So the first thing was, and this was what my main focus was on initially, was that the deed for the house we were buying, they didn't have it. I don't know if they'd lost it, or you know, they never had it in the first place. It was also wasn't registered with the land registry, because not all properties were or are. So they had to go through that process. So they had to get it registered, they had to find this deed, and that took forever. It took, we only got it back about 2 weeks ago. So there was all that worry. Where's the deed? And then I'm thinking in the back of my mind, did they not have the deed? And you know, what's going on? And it was just scary. But we finally got somewhere. And it took a lot of chasing on my part to actually get the deed in the first place. I had to contact the estate agent. The estate agent had to contact their solicitor, because our solicitor was just saying, well, they haven't sent it to us yet, kind of scenario. We just have to wait. And I was thinking, I'm not happy about that. I think, you know, we need it now, so we know that it's there. Towards the end, he was getting a bit like, it's a bit strange, and I was thinking, yeah, it is, and it's not really very comforting. But finally, we got the deed, and they sent us all the paperwork, which is, again, now I know that that's what usually, or in this case, happens, that you do actually get paperwork to read through before you actually physically move into the house. So we got the deed. We could see, you know, any burdens, or you know, any issues that there were with the property. You know, you could see the land map and everything of where the property was, and it was just night and day difference from the first solicitor to this solicitor. And I don't know, like I said, if that's because it was in a different part of the country and they do things differently, or if that solicitor that we were with the first time just didn't bother sending us anything. I really don't know. But there was a difference. In the house we bought was new build this time. The house we were buying was an older house. So again, I don't know if that makes a difference. Who knows? So everything was fine in terms of that. So then I start thinking, why is it taking so long? I mean, I was already thinking that anyway, and I had asked him multiple times, you know, why is it taking so long? And all he kept saying was that they haven't got their searches back, but they had some questions. So back in, they made their offer in October. So back in November, we got a list of questions which we had to answer, and we had to do all our paperwork again for the sale, which is, again, we've never done this before, but you had to, you know, say what you were leaving behind and what condition it was in, all that kind of thing. So that was all done immediately. Literally the day the paperwork arrived, I sent it back straight away. This is how on task I am, and I'm not leaving anything to chance. But I'm always like that. It's just my nature. I'm very efficient, I guess you could say, in terms of if something needs to be doing, I'll get it done. So I don't know why they're not like that in terms of our buyers, but they're just not. They're just not doing anything as far as I can see. They're just letting the time pass by, and all this time we're accruing solicitors fees, and you know, we're in a chain, and they know that we have to buy a house, and I'm just like, do they not think that the other people might not like to wait so long? And I don't understand, but literally they have not moved at all. They're not even glacially moving. They haven't moved at all from the point in November when I answered the questions that they had. Because they keep saying their searches haven't come back yet. So the searches, as you know, check things like the land registry and environmental agencies and mining and all of those kind of things, and they claim their searches still haven't come back yet, which I do not understand why it's taking so long. Apparently they've used a third party to do the searches, or that's what we think, because when I contacted our local council and the land registry, they had no record of any inquiries. So my solicitor thinks they must have used a third party, but he doesn't obviously know for sure. Their solicitor has gone on holiday, isn't answering questions, and it's just, it's not fun. So bearing in mind they made their offer in October, and we're now, this is real time, we're now February the 24th, and we still haven't moved. So initially the solicitor thought we'd be moving in January. So as you do, you start to prepare, you start to, luckily I didn't pack, because I think if I would have been surrounded by boxes by now, I would have been tearing my hair out. But I literally didn't pack because I wanted to know the date for sure before I started packing. It's not like I have a house where I can put stuff in the garage. We'd have to climb around boxes or use our storage centre. So that's what we were going to do. We were going to hire a storage centre. So I had all that sorted out in January. I had to cancel it because lo and behold, their searches weren't back, but also our deed wasn't back. So, you know, it's one of those things. It was fine. Then come February again, our deed's back, so that's yes, but their searches are not back, so I still had to cancel my storage centre reservation again. Then again I had to cancel it again because we're now towards the end of February. So I don't know what's happening. I really don't. All I can think of is they're first time buyers. Maybe, as I said, we were naive at the time, we didn't know the process. Maybe they're not questioning why it's taking so long. But even I, at the time of when we did our first transaction, was asking, you know, for updates and things like that, because we were renting and we needed to give notice. So I was, you know, contacting the solicitors regularly and, you know, finding out where they were at and things like that. So maybe they're not doing that. I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is that we haven't moved at all in terms of where we're at. They still haven't got their searches back. They've got their mortgage approved, which is great. The housing association approved them, which is fantastic, but we just haven't got the most important things back, which is the searches. Now there's one question, and this is why I thought I'd make this video, because I think this is really important for anybody who is purchasing a new built house. So there's one question that they've asked us, and at the time I thought they were completely daft and potty, and why on earth would they be asking this question? So the question was, and I'm not wording it exactly right because it's legalese the way they question it, but the question was about access to the property. And I'm thinking, what in the world are they talking about? We live on a cul-de-sac. It's off a main road. You literally drive on the main road, turn, and then you're on our street, where our cul-de-sac, where our house is. So I was thinking, why are they talking about access? There's clearly access perfectly fine. There's, you know, there's no issue at all. So the solicitor asked them, told them that. And then they asked again and said, no, they didn't think we were understanding. And to be fair, we weren't, because I genuinely didn't understand what they were talking about. So then they said that it was in terms of legal access, in terms of that there was nothing on the deeds to say we could access this property. And bearing in mind, we'd never seen the deeds before, so who knew? And we were never told at the time of purchase that there could be possibly any access issues. And we've never had any access issues. We literally, it's a housing, little small housing estate. We all use the road. Never had any issues. The bin men come up and down the road to take the rubbish. The sweeper guy from the council comes and cleans the road like he does with the other road. It's always been treated as just a regular road. The road is used a ton by, because it's kind of like a turning circle, so all the people that are on the main road will just come down our road, turn around and go back up again if they need to go the other way. So it's never been, to me, a thought that there was anything possibly wrong with the road. So finally, after going backwards and forwards, the solicitor said to me eventually that I think what they're trying to get at is whether the road is adopted. And again, I was like, what the heck does that mean? I don't even know what you're talking about. So I do a ton of Googling and I find out what adopted means. Basically, a road that is adopted means that the council are responsible for it in terms of maintenance. So if there's any potholes or anything like that, they have to see to it themselves. There's no cost to the people that are on the road. Also, if it's adopted, you get your rubbish collected from your house. You don't have to drag it somewhere down the bottom of the road, and no one has to pay any money for any kind of maintenance or liability insurance. So, for example, if someone comes and trips on the road, if it's not an adopted road, they can sue you. I was completely perplexed once I started reading all this information about what an adopted road is, and I'm thinking it must be adopted because it meets all the criteria. We've never ever been asked for any money. None of the people on the estate have to purchase materials for the road. It's in perfect condition anyway, but we've never been asked, you know, to set up a sinking fund or anything like that for the road. So none of it was making any sense whatsoever. And this has been the thing that's been kind of keep coming back up and up, because they haven't got their searches back. They don't know who owns, well, they say they don't know who has access to the road, but the thing, so out of desperation, I've been staying up super late over the weekends trying to figure out what they're talking about. I've been scouring the internet for all the information on adopted rows, and now I know more about adopted rows than they ever cared to. And all these different types of agreements that the developers could have gone in with the council to make sure that the road was adopted, and when they built the estate and everything else. And I've come to the conclusion that it has to be one of two things. It has to be adopted and they just haven't got their search back to confirm it, or two, it's not adopted, but because the council own it, they treat it that way anyway. In which case the people who are buying the property, it's a moot point, because the council will be the ones who maintain it, and the council 100% own the road because it's part. I downloaded our deed from the land registry and it confirms that the council own the road. So the solicitor's seen that, though. Their solicitor has seen that. So I don't understand where all these issues about the road come from. It's just bizarre. But that is a problem that keeps reappearing, and it won't be resolved until they get their searches back to confirm what's happening with the road. But that is just something to really bear in mind if you're buying a new build house. Check about the road that your house is positioned on, whether or not it's an adopted road, because when you come to sell, it's the first thing that apparently the solicitor's going to ask. And again, 2 houses, well 3 in theory, have sold on our estate within the last couple of years, and they've sold just fine. So I don't know whether or not those solicitors didn't think to ask about the road, or it's a moot point because they got their searches back and they knew it wasn't an issue. And maybe this solicitor, just because she hasn't got their searches back, doesn't know that the road, everything's fine with the road. I don't know, but she keeps wittering on about this road. But yes, it's just something to bear in mind if you do live on a new build estate, because I think if the house is older, it's highly likely the road's going to have been adopted. But you know, we've lived here for 10 years. In that whole time, there has never been any question of any maintenance for the road, any money. No, none of the people on the estate have had anyone ask them to fix the road or to contribute for a sinking fund for the road. It's always been treated like a public road. Lots of people from the general public use it as a public road. So I just don't know where this is coming from. But that's where we are. So that's my end of part 1. So we're still waiting. We're waiting for their searches to come back. We're waiting to proceed. But I will definitely keep you updated. My fear, and this is the thing that's terrifying me the most, is the people that we're buying from are going to get fed up with how long it's taking, because bearing in mind it's taken 4 months to get to this point and we still haven't got a date remotely in sight. I just hope, of all hopes, that they'll be patient with us, but I don't know whether they will. That's the thing. If we lose the house, it's going to be so devastating, because you know, you set your heart on stuff, and I know you shouldn't, because anything can happen, but you do, and it's human nature to do that. But also, there isn't anything out there really that we can afford. So we were really lucky to find this house in the first place. So we just have to hope that they get a move on and stop going at a snail's pace. And like I said, I don't understand. I was so excited to move when I bought this house. I was, you know, contacting the solicitors and chasing things up and finding out, you know, when would we be moving. And maybe they are, but why have they not got their searches back after all this time? It's a third party doing the searches. There's no, you know, it shouldn't take as long as it should to do them via the council. And even if they had have done them via the council, which the council says they haven't, they would have been well and truly back now. So they've genuinely chosen the wrong option. They should have done it through the council, because their waiting list or waiting time was 7 weeks, and they've already shown on the website that they're already processing applications for January. And if they applied for their searches back in November, December time, they would have well and truly have got them back. So I just don't know. I've heard solicitors play games and, you know, rack up money by making things go slow, or they have lots of cases. According to our estate agent, the solicitor that they picked is one of the best in the area. So I don't know, but our estate agent isn't that bothered either, and that's the thing. They're supposed to be getting £2,500. You'd think that they'd be chasing things, but they haven't. I've literally had to do everything myself, so I just don't understand. Like, I had to contact the council, I had to contact the land registry, and I don't understand why it's taking so long. So that's where we're at. We're stuck right now in terms of nothing's progressing. We're ready in terms of everything with our house purchase is ready. It's just the sale. So I just hope that they don't mess everything up for us by taking so long that the other people get fed up because, you know, they've got whatever they want to do with their money. I don't know if they're buying another house. I'd have no idea. But yes, it's just, if you're a first time buyer, think about other people in the chain. That's what I would say. It's not just about you. You know, chase things up, be prompt with your paperwork and stuff. And I think most people are. So again, maybe it's just us, but like I said, I wouldn't have picked them. I would have picked the teacher and the, you know, her daughter, but I didn't have a say. They chose them, and you have to put faith in the fact that, I mean, they seemed fine. I only saw them when they came to view, but, you know, they seemed fine. They seemed, you know, regular family. So you have to put your trust in them, but it's just one of those things. We just have to hope for the best. But I'll update anyway in part 2 what happens. This is, as I said, live in terms of we're up to date now, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens and just hope for the best. So please keep your fingers crossed for me, and if you have any insight into roads, please let me know. I would love to hear if you've ever been in a situation where you've had a new build house that's 10 years old and then suddenly raising questions about a road that has always been used as a public road. Please let me know what happened. I have done a lot of research and I have found different options that we could look at. So some of those things were getting the council to adopt it if it isn't adopted, bearing in mind they already own it, so that shouldn't in theory be a problem. You would hope. But I still maintain I'm hoping that they have already done that. Also, we could ask them, as I said, to adopt it, but we can also because it leads straight onto an adopted road that is definitely a 100% adopted, I can see it on the records, then in theory we shouldn't have a problem with that. So there is ways around it. Actually offers them other options and doesn't just say, oh, just walk away because it's not an adopted road. I mean, I'm still hoping it is an adopted road, but I think it's a unique situation because the council do already own it. So I can't understand why she would be advising them to walk away in theory, because I think it's one of the better situations the fact that the council own the road already, in terms of if it isn't adopted, to get it adopted. So I can't see why there should be a big deal. But like I say, she keeps asking the same question about access to the road when her searches would answer that question, and yet she's not trying to get the searches back. Or if she is, they need to find somebody else to do them. I don't understand. I really don't. And that's the frustrating part about this whole thing, because it's completely out of your hands. There's only so much you can do. I can't interfere with their legal stuff. All I can do is, you know, do my own. But it's just frustrating. So anyway, let me know if you've had any experience with roads. I'd love to hear, but I will see you in our next video. Take care. Bye for now.